I think it's recording. I don't know if people got a message.
State
We're up
recording.
to 17. Okay, perfect. Cool. Well, let's just go ahead and get started. So I do see a lot of new faces, so I'll introduce myself. I'm Christy Brown. I'm the leader of the San Diego user group. We meet every month, same day and time, third Wednesday. Trying to do quarterly in person, so we'll see if we can get there. Thanks for everybody who came out to our January in person kickoff with Own Backup. That was super fun. And today we have a guest speaker, Jennifer Lee. We are all fangirl over her. But we wanted to do something for the spring release. And I feel like this is just important to get in front of people because I've noticed since I've become a consultant that I have like less and less time to review release notes and find out what's upcoming. And so I lean on like Release Readiness Live and Jen's blog and all of these Salesforce produced tools pretty heavily now. Whereas I used to just nerd out and read the release notes all night. So I know everybody doesn't have time to do that. And so I think things like this are great to just pull out these cool things and give you guys cool use cases that you can start using right away. So Jen, I'm going to turn it over to you. And then everybody can, of course, use the chat to ask questions and stuff. And then at the end, if anybody wants to talk about some of their favorite new features, um, and then we'll move on with our day. So, Jen, I'll turn it over to you and I'll go off camera.
Great. Thanks, Christy, for inviting me. Happy to always present to folks and share my knowledge. And I'm going to apologize in advance. I'm still nursing this bronchitis that I had. I'm going on the second month of it. My doctor's husband had it for 16 weeks. So hopefully I don't have it for that long.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's not fun. Not fun at all. All right. So we're going to go through some of my highlights for spring release. And I'm going to be looking at my other screen there. That's why I'm not looking right at the camera. So I'm Jennifer Lee. I'm lead admin evangelist at Salesforce. Prior to joining Salesforce, I was in the Salesforce ecosystem for over 10 years as a Salesforce customer, mainly in the financial services industry. Just loved automation and did my blog on automation and did release note sharing, because if I have to read through them, someone has to read through them. So why not just share that knowledge? And then joining Salesforce, what I focus on is I have two series, which I'll talk about in a little bit later on at the end. So I'm on our Salesforce admin YouTube channel. I write blogs and I present at various Salesforce hosted events, world tours, TDX, which is coming up in 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks, gosh, Dreamforce, and at user groups as well as Dream events. So because this is a Salesforce presentation, I have to remind you that Salesforce is a publicly traded company. So please base your purchasing decisions on current products and services and not on any forward-looking statements that I might be making. And I'd like to thank each and every one of you for awesome admins at your companies and for supporting one another in the community. It really does take a village, and it's just great to have that support of one another. All right, so we're going to break this out in different sections. So in terms of app building enhancements, one of the cool features in Lightning App Builder is now you could access fields from related objects. And you can span two levels of relationships. And if we have time, I'll actually demo this in a little bit. But note that for now, for this release, cross-object fields are currently read-only. And we now have dynamic actions on mobile for standard objects. Prior to spring, we had custom objects, but now for standard objects, we can add those actions and also apply component visibility in on them. And now for Lightning dashboard enhancements, we have a few. So now generally available, you could more easily transfer your Lightning dashboards to another user, either one at a time or in bulk, and notify that new owner via email. Previously, I think you had to clone the reports and do all that extra work just
That
to
was
transfer
awful.
ownership. Yeah, like, why, right?
We're all excited about this one.
Yeah. And previously, these two enhancements was only available for like unlimited edition and maybe enterprise, but now all editions have access to be able to add these image, rich text, and dashboard widgets. So you can add up to 25 of them. So 20 charts and tables, 2 images, 25 rich text widgets. And then you're also able to use filters to further target your dashboard data so that you don't need to create different versions of your dashboard for your different teams. So that is really awesome. So you could use up to 5 filters. So that's available for all editions. This edition, this edition, this edition. Here you go. All right, so now for user management enhancements. In beta, if you're using user access policies, you can now access user pick list fields. So from the user record, also groups and queues. And this really allows you to automate your permission assignments of permission sets, permission set licenses, package licenses, groups, and queues. So if you haven't used it already, I recommend giving it a try so that you eliminate some of the manual work that admins have to do. So if you could put rules around when certain users should have access to things, why not automate it, right? Like who needs to do things manually? So to enable this, go into setup to the user management settings page and then enable user access policies. And then other user management enhancements. So when you go ahead and delete a permission set, it will now tell you and warn you if there are users assigned to that permission set. It seems it's just the little things, right? I don't know why it let you do it before, but now you're warned, and then you could either figure out whether you should be deleting it if there are other users still assigned to it, or let those users know that you're removing that permission. And then I didn't realize this, but apparently permission set groups weren't available in all editions, and now they are with the move from profiles to permission set and permission set groups. It makes sense to have that all available for all editions.
I
So
didn't
these
know those weren't available for all editions either. Weird.
Yeah, right. These are just a few of the things that Cheryl's team has delivered for spring. I know that they're really busy with other like Cheryl's team is just amazing at delivering all these user management enhancements. So I really need to give kudos to her. Okay, and now there's going to be, of course, because I love Flow so much, I have to cover Flow enhancements. So I love reactivity and screen flows. It is definitely a game changer. Now, text template resources are now reactive. If you use them in your screen flows, note that you have to use them in the plain text mode in order for it to be reactive. And then you could use those text templates over and over again in your display text or long text area or text components for major reuse versus paste or typing in the text individually into those specific text components. And the display text, which was beta in the last release, is now generally available. And what is new in this release is that when you display decimal places, commas, currency, and date formats, they now display correctly in their screen flows. And also joining the list of reactivity is the long text area component as well. So really, really loving the reactivity and not having to go to the next screen to see information. And repeaters. So this is in beta. So I should probably describe what beta versus GA is. So GA is, it's in production, it works, completely supported. Beta are new features that we're putting out there for people to test out, feel out. They're not completely supported. So this is the first version of repeaters that is being introduced in this release. I know that there's much more on the roadmap for repeater components coming down the pike. But what this basically is just think of when you're filling out an insurance application, for example, and you have beneficiaries, right? Maybe you have one beneficiary, maybe you have multiple, but this allows you to say, okay, I want to add another beneficiary, and then it shows that information, and then you want to add another one or remove it. So it doesn't necessarily show you like 5 beneficiaries, but it allows you to dynamically say, I want to add another one, and I want to add another one. So this is really cool. Currently, it supports checkbox text, long text, passwords, all the things that you see on the screen here, but it doesn't support conditional visibility, help text, or input validation or reactivity. So fingers crossed, hoping it will come later down on the roadmap. So really excited to see where that's headed. And then with screen components, you can now validate the input fields. Previously, I think it was limited in terms of what it can do. So now you can use formulas in your screen components, but remember that formulas in flows is backwards from how you do formulas everywhere else in Salesforce, just to keep you on your toes. So remember, input validation formulas only show the error if the criteria is false, which again is different than validation rules, for example. I didn't build it, just communicating it to everyone. All right, and if you use data tables and you select records, now it remembers your previous record selections instead of having you start from scratch. So again, it's just the little things that make life so much easier for folks. And they introduced the ability to save your draft of flow as you're working on it. So a lot of people don't, create and complete your flow in one sitting, right? You start and then you might have to jump and do something else. So now you're able to not have to complete everything in order to save it, right? So now you could put placeholders in place and then come back to it. And if it's not complete, you see that little like a circle with the cross to let you know that you haven't completed that element yet. And then this is huge. So I know when I built flows as a customer, I had a lot of email alerts all over the place. So now when you go to an email alert, it will tell you which flows use that email alert. So if you need to make a change, you know where you're impacting other things in your org. And then you could click on the link and it'll open up that specific flow. So that's definitely helpful. And then in the transform feature, which is still beta, they now allow the ability to calculate a sum or get a count on the target field. So I just started to play around with transform, so I'm really excited to see where that goes in the future. But you can use this to calculate the sum or the count of items rather than having to go through and do loops and assignments to do that. So if there's a way to eliminate the number of elements you need, the better. And then for those who use record triggered flows, Note that you could also set your flows to run as the user that triggered the event or your org's default workflow user. And this could help when running into issues with permissions. And for those using Data Cloud, so Data Cloud triggered flows was introduced in the last release. And now they're giving us the ability to debug, which is huge because as an admin, I do not create flows and deploy them where I can't test them. So it's great now that we're able to troubleshoot them like we do with other flow types. And note that if you do use debug, that any data changes will be rolled back. And now we also have the ability in Flow Builder to send data to Data Cloud, and this is using an ingestion API connector. So I haven't played around with this yet, so looking to get my hands dirty and learning really a lot more with Data Cloud and using that with Flow. So now for those who haven't migrated your processes to Flow, if those are still lingering out there, know that the migration tool has been enhanced to allow for partial migrations of actions to Flow Builder. And these are some of your scheduled actions, things like that, or things that were previously unsupported in the migration tool. One thing to note is that with this release, we're ending the end of support, targeting December 31st, 2025, so next year. So if you have been procrastinating, moving your processes over to Flow and your workflow rules, please start working on them, start prioritizing them, create a backlog, right? Start picking through them one by one. Now, we've already disabled the ability to create new, right? We haven't disabled the ability to edit and activate, so you can still do that. Existing automation, we don't plan to deactivate them, auto deactivate them, but know that right now, come December 31st of next year, you cannot submit a Salesforce support case if you have issues with your workflow rules and processes. And so to help you with the migration, we created the migration tool to move a lot of your workflow rules and processes, your most common actions. It does not cover all use cases. And I don't think we're investing more in this migration tool because we need to move on to continue to add enhancements to Flow as that's the end state tool. So my thought on the migration tool is use it sparingly. Like I'm of the thought camp of really analyzing the workflow rules and processes that you have in your org today. Take the time to do that, especially if you have older orgs. I came from an org that was 5+ years, and I actually did this migration prior to even knowing that this was going to happen, just because I liked Flow better than workflow rules and processes. So I took the time to review workflow rules and processes with my business stakeholders, because something that you built 5 years ago might not need to continue to happen now, right? It could be that you have new staff and they're not even aware that your automation is doing all these things behind the scenes, because I had meetings with stakeholders and they're like, I didn't know this did this and it doesn't need to do that. So it gives you the opportunity to spring clean your org. So there might be things that you don't need that you could get rid of, right? Why move it over if you don't have to? And you might end up creating new processes. So I would spend the time object by object. Don't attack everything at a time. Split it down into manageable parts, right? So pick an object. If you haven't started the migration, pick an object that doesn't have a lot of automation to it, right? Start small, figure out what's going on, get comfortable with building in flows. It might be that you end up designing your flows in a completely different way than your workflow rules and processes. Right? With Process Builder, it was more about doing them as one process per object. But that's not necessary anymore with Flow with the various features that we have. So definitely recommend you using that sparingly. Try to learn Flow. There might be different designs you come up with, and definitely test. Testing is really important. Don't skim on that, because you might have Apex running as well, and moving things to either before save or after save flow can change the way that your records react to that automation. So definitely test in a sandbox. Make sure everything's working. Deactivate those workflow rules and processes. Have those new flows run a month just to make sure that everything is working fine and you don't have to revert back because your automation isn't working as expected. And then go and delete those workflow rules and processes in production after you know that everything is working fine. So that's my advice for those of you who haven't migrated everything yet. And as I mentioned, the Flow team is continuing to, they reviewed the workflow rules and processes capabilities, and they brought over and enhanced Flow Builder to take on some of those capabilities where there were gaps. And so they're really now focused on increasing and improving Flow Builder to make it even easier for folks to use the tool. And we've also introduced newer things like custom error messages in the last release, which is really awesome.
Jen, everyone's really excited for all of that, but we've got some newbies on today, and they're wondering when things like Process Builder and workflow rules will fall off of the admin exams. Do you happen to have a good guess about that?
Um, I know it's come up. I don't know exactly when it will be removed, but what I could do is I could ask folks that I know are working on those classes and exams to see if there's any type of decision made on when those would roll out. But yeah, like if you can't create them, I don't understand why.
Yeah, why we're asking questions about them.
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
that's like being tested on exam on Classic.
Yeah,
I know people are
seriously.
still on that, but
So crazy. Do
yeah.
you guys have a number, like what percentage of customers haven't migrated away from Process Builder and workflow rules? Or that would just be impossible to know.
That's a good question. I think there's probably a way that the Flow team knows
Mm,
how many are still kicking out there.
I think
Because
that
I
would
know
be
they do
interesting.
have a count of like how many flows are run a month and things like that. So
Yeah, cool.
yeah, I think there's probably a way for them to target those companies.
Like, hey, do this already.
Yeah, yeah, great.
Cool.
Um, yeah, and then for flow orchestration, I think I only had one enhancement. So now you could specify your running user in your orchestrations when you have a background or MuleSoft step. So you can either select the automated process user or your regular user. And so I think by default, it's the automated process user, but if that automated process user doesn't have the necessary permissions, then you would switch to a specific user. All right. So those are all the highlights I have. I did want to call out our release resources page on our website, admin.salesforce.com. You can go there and watch video highlights, get information on any of the upcoming releases, the key dates that you should pay attention to. Not for this release, but probably for the next releases, because you should be thinking about things like what release my sandbox should be in. Should it be in a preview? So a preview of the upcoming release, or should it be in the current release? So for example, that becomes important when you have a path that your changes take to go to production. If you have a set of sandboxes that your changes follow to get to production. So I've been in companies where we've had a developer sandbox, and we had a UAT sandbox, a QA sandbox, and then production. So in those instances where your sandbox that's going up to production is set to be converted to a preview sandbox, which means you'll get to see what's coming in the upcoming release, you want to make sure you take steps to make it back into your current release, because you want it to mimic what's in production. So what you don't want to do is have some sandboxes in the newer release and some sandboxes that aren't going up to production, because you might get different results when you're testing, right? Because in a preview sandbox, you're going to get newer enhancements that is different and don't exist in your production org. Or you might get permissions added to your profiles that don't exist in production. And when you do your deployment, guess what? It's going to fail because it's like, I don't know what this thing is because it doesn't exist in production. So that's a piece of advice for maybe new admins out there. Just be aware that there are things that you need to consider when a new release is coming up, in addition to going into your preview sandbox and testing out these new things. And when I was a customer, I did things like lunch and learns, where I learned things about the release, and then I taught my teammates, and I also shared it with business users to tell them, like, here's what's coming up, right? Here's this feature that you use, and then with this new release, you're gonna get these other things with it, or it's changing some behavior that you're used to it behaving this other way. So it's good to give them a heads up. It really allows you to be that trusted advisor for all things Salesforce. So it's really great to have that relationship where you're seen as the expert. So that's what I have to say for release resources. And okay, so here I'm going to plug the two things that I'm really excited about. So Automate This, if you haven't heard of it already, it's a live stream series that I do every month. Chrissy's been a guest presenter, and we live stream that on our Salesforce Admins YouTube channel, and we feature trailblazers like Christy, who solve real world problems with Salesforce automation. We talk about topics that are top of mind for admins, such as record trigger flow design patterns. And I see Mark Jones is on, and he's going to be one of my presenters at TDX when we do our live episode there. And the best part, because it's live, you can interact with the audience and you can ask questions live of the presenters. So if you haven't seen Automate This, here's a short link to the playlist. This is the session. If you're going to TDX, and even so, if you're going to TDX in person, I have an Automate This breakout session. We're focusing on record triggered flow design patterns, and I have the product manager Diana Jaffe for record triggered automation, and I have 4 trailblazers, so including Mark Jones, who's on the chat. I know he's furiously chatting. Alex Radovanovic, Jennifer Cole, and Michelle Hansen, and they will go through use cases where they're going to walk through design patterns that they use in their record triggered automation. So that short link goes to Agenda Builder, but know that if you're not attending TDX, it's going to be available video on demand on Salesforce Plus. So you'll be able to get access to it in person as well as video on demand. So check it out. And later next month, on Automate This, my live stream series, I will have Lynn Geyer on, who will show us how she used flows and Experience Cloud to access Salesforce Scheduler. So pretty excited for that. And that's a short link that will go to the episode page where you could set a reminder, and then you'll get an email reminder the day of the event. And then my other YouTube series is called How I Did It. And today we relaunched the series. We put it on pause last year after 3 episodes, but we're bringing it back. Today was the first day, the first episode landed. So very excited for that. If you haven't watched it, go to sforce.co, How I Solved It. This features awesome admins who talk about a business problem and how they chose to solve it. And it covers not only automation, but app building, reports and dashboards, things like that. So that's a really cool series as well. And before I go and close out, let me go back here. And I do have a couple of demos. So I'm in my fictional mochi cupcakes org. And let me demo the the cross object fields on dynamic forms. So previously, when you needed to show related objects, right, fields from related objects, you had to resort to things like formula fields, right, to pull in information. So I have a formula field to pull in the email, customer email, because this is on a custom cupcake order object. Or I needed to use a related record component to pull in information about the contact. But with the new enhancement with cross object fields, I can now go into Lightning App Builder in the cupcake order page, and I could go into fields. And I could locate that object. So customer is an object, and I could locate that field and drag it onto the canvas, and it's there, right? That's all I needed to do. And over here, you'll see the breadcrumb path, right? So it went from cupcake order, the related object is customer, and then over to the right, you see that related object as well as the API name. And then because it's in Lightning App Builder, you could use component visibility on that field as well, just like you do everywhere else in Lightning App Builder. So that is pretty cool. Now, we also delivered on that dynamic actions on standard objects for mobile. And what you want to do before you're able to use that feature is you need to do the Salesforce mobile app and setup, and then enable dynamic actions on mobile. And then you go into Lightning App Builder, and hopefully I didn't time out. Let's see. We're in Lightning App Builder. We're on the contact record page. And then you can go in and upgrade to dynamic actions if you don't have it already. So I'm going to just quickly do that. And we're able to add actions. So I already pre-configured this view map quick action. And again, because it's in Lightning App Builder, we can use component visibility. And I could set it so that the form factor equals phone and show it only on those who are viewing it on mobile. So I could configure dynamic actions in the highlight panel. I can also, if I wanted to only configure mobile specific actions for the page, I can go to the page properties and check the box here to enable page level dynamic actions on Salesforce mobile app. And then here I can do the view map again. I could add additional filters if I want. Let's add another button here, delete. And then because we're designing it, we could switch over to the phone and then we see those actions there, right? We don't have to then go to our, save the page, go to our mobile device to test it out. We can actually see it here. So that's cool.
Do you have an opinion, Jen, on like doing it at the page level versus in the highlights panel component? Should we do one over the other?
Yeah, so if you use page level dynamic actions, that takes precedence over anything that you configured mobile wise in the highlights panel. So I do one or the other, not both. But if you have actions that have the desktop and mobile, it might be easier to just configure them there, so that you can see all the actions there. But if you only want to focus on mobile, then maybe the page level makes sense. So it really depends on how you want to work.
Yeah.
But
Cool.
I wouldn't do like a mix and match of both. I'd
Yeah,
pick
that would get confusing.
yeah. Because then you're like, okay, I'm configuring them in highlights. Why aren't they appearing? Right. So, and then coming in the February release, I don't know the exact date of the February release, but there also is Einstein for formulas, which I didn't cover in the highlights, but Einstein for formulas is GA, and it's going to be available in unlimited edition and enterprise editions. And what it allows you to do is, if you have an existing formula, right, and you had to go and make a change to it, you have to, understand what the current formula is doing before you make enhancements. But maybe it's been a while since you created that formula or someone else created it and you're just going in and maintaining it. Wouldn't it be great if something explained it for you? Well, now Einstein can explain it. So by clicking on explain formula, that had me create the prompt to prompt Einstein to explain the formula for me. Here's Einstein's explanation of the formula. And then if I want more details, I click on more details, and it sometimes includes the API names. And note that Einstein is still learning, so it might not always be accurate. So I would give it feedback by giving it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And if it wasn't accurate, provide feedback to teach the LLM and teach it going forward. So for spring 24, it will explain formulas for you. Summer 25, and this forward-looking statement is, it will help you troubleshoot and fix your flow errors, which is super cool because I know for the more complex things like an if statement or whatever, sometimes I don't get the syntax right. So I can use all the help I can get. And in winter, you'll be able to use natural language and describe your formula, and Einstein will create it for you. So that will eliminate the, I don't know, hours that I go on Google figuring out the right syntax that I should use. And also it's almost like a mini like Steve Mo. Einstein is a mini Steve Mo to help you create your formulas for you.
Is that, you said it was unlimited and enterprise. Is there any additional licensing for these Einstein features, or everybody gets them as part of their?
I don't know the specifics, but I believe you have to have like one of those Einstein products. So like maybe the Einstein for sales or service or one of those other products, and it's like a bundled thing.
Okay.
But to be sure, contact your account exec.
There you go.
They will know the details. Do not come to me because I just think that that's what it is. But I could be wrong. So definitely talk to your AE to get the specifics. So Yeah, so that's my presentation. So as admin relations, we also offer other content. Admin.salesforce.com is where we deliver all our blogs. Also listen to the podcast with Mike Gerhold and Jillian Bruce, where you get all your podcast content and automate this. Watch Automate This. All right,
Totally
so
watch it. It's great.
I haven't been paying attention to any of the chat. Are there any questions that I should now focus on?
So there was the one about the certification exam. There was one about the repeater component. Let me see if I can find it. I think it was just asking for clarification on if, if you use that, you don't have to loop through that screen to make people enter things again.
That's correct, yes.
A lot of love for the cross objects.
Mm-hmm.
Dynamic form fields. I started using those immediately. It's saved my life. I love it. I don't think we had any other questions. Anybody have questions for Jen? Oh, here's some from Sienna. Regarding data table retaining info now, do I have to do anything to turn that on, or should it just work that way?
Good question. I'll have to find out whether it's like an API only thing or whether it's updates
I
it
feel
for
like
everybody. But I can go to the PM and ask that question, and then I can let you know, Christy, and you can communicate that out.
okay, cool. I think to just testing it out in a preview
Mhm.
org or waiting until you have the new release. I know is everybody rolled out now because I feel like they are.
Someone has something to say.
There's a delivery truck outside. But I'll play with that too, Sienna, and come back. But I'm pretty sure it's just that's what the how the component is now, and you shouldn't have to enable anything special for it.
And what I could do, Chrissy, is share this. I'll put this on a G drive, which isn't closed for access, and then I can share it, and then you could share it out to folks so that they have access to the deck.
Perfect. And I'll add this recording and then the slides too, just on the actual event page in the Trailblazer community group site so everybody can access away. Kenny asked, does this mean that San Diego is your favorite user group now?
+1.
Woo! Go San Diego. Any other questions for Jen? Lots of thank yous and lots of excited about all of the features that you talked about. That was amazing as always. Thank you for coming and sharing all of this. And I hope everybody has fun with all of these fun new things in the new release and, start preparing for the next one already. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day and keep your eyes peeled for more information about our April in-person meetup. And bye. Thanks, Jen.
Bye.